I see myself as an instrument who adores knowledge. And I guess this is something that we all have in common. We all have value for knowledge. We absorb knowledge, and we want to, all of us, help our lives, help to enhance our lives. We want to make changes. We want to make positive changes. We want to see those changes become real. We don't want to just listen, but transform that knowledge into how you feel about yourself, how you feel about the world, how you perceive others, how you perceive yourself. We all have so many things in common here, more things in common than not in common. We all have a vision for something higher than the world. The world is a playground, a place for us to conduct our transactions with other people, to do what has to be done, to do what is to be done. And amongst that, there comes a point where amidst all of the doing, you start to ask a different kind of question. And the question has a certain existential perspective about it. You want to know about what is the purpose of all of this. What's the purpose of living? Why am I here? What happens after death? How did the universe come about? What was before the universe came about? How did time and space come? What is God? You want to discover what is your connection to everything. And as long as these questions don't get asked, then there is a existential angst. It's silent existential angst that we feel. And this angst is one of, I'm a small person, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I will never succeed, I can't get this, I am different to everyone else, I've got bad karma, I've got things on my account, and I just have to work through all of that. So all of these voices we all share. In fact, before I come here, my mind shares the same voice. What are you going to say, Andre? How are you going to introduce yourself? All of these voices of sort of doubt. And these voices we have to work through. And these voices, some news for you, don't end. In fact, to want these voices to end, that's not reality. The reality is you have been conditioned for years, since childhood. And these conditionings will transform into a certain narrative in your mind. And this narrative can hold you back. As long as this narrative holds us back, then when we start to ask questions about who am I? What is my connection to God? What is God? How do I reconcile differences if all that is here is one? Then why do I see many? How do I understand that? Right now, right here, not as some intellectual thing that I've read in a book that sounds really good, and the person takes that to self-soothe, self-soothing statements, quotes from other books. This means nothing. It's just words. So my intention is not to merely intellectualize this. My intention is always clarity. What is true right now. You just have to see it. There is nothing missing in this moment. I just have to recognize what is true right now. As long as I don't recognize what is true right now, the voice will keep on recurring. You're small, you're different, a small being feeling so small in the vast universe, trying to feel big for a moment, going shopping, buying things, surrounding oneself with company, and all of these things are wonderful. In fact, Vedanta does not for one moment discard the world. What Vedanta says is that you absolutely need the world for your success, for your prosperity. You need interactions. You need hobbies. if one just studies 24/7, what's going to happen? You'll go cuckoo, right? You'll go crazy. It's just so, right? I need some variety. So we have certain needs in our life. So we can't just say discard the world, discard your hobbies, discard relationships. All of these things play an important role in your life. And you know this already from experience. They give you a certain emotional contentment. And without that emotional contentment, the irony is, how will I understand and live this knowledge, resting in this knowledge, resting in God? Right now, all that is here is God. All that is here is Ishvara. This is the understanding that I want to show you. This is the understanding that my teacher consistently shows me. And that is the only understanding that I need in this world. Anything else will never be enough. No matter how much you know about geography, history, languages, Sanskrit, there will always be more. And that smallness will come back. I'll still feel small because there's someone bigger, there's someone better than me. And so the only knowledge that I hold on to, because I know it works and I live it as much as possible, is all that is here is Ishvara. This means that when an ordinary person looks at the world, what they see is forms. I see you different, me different, trees different, sun is different, universe is different, time is different, it's all just different. What I see is unity. This unity is not some magic pill, it's an inquiry that has to take place to understand that despite differences here, all that is here right now is Ishvara. That is the teaching for this entire course. Therefore, Kena Upanishad will show you this. Now, before we begin, so that you don't just sit down and feel relaxed, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. So what I will do is start with a prayer, Sahana Vavatu, and then we will go through a little game. So I will first explain what Sahana Vavatu is. Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryankaravavahe, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahe. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu. The first two lines want to say that everyone needs protection. And what kind of protection? You need protection, not only physical protection, but you also need protection from your own voices, from your own stories. So the first two lines say, may we both, not just the teacher, but also the student, not just the student, but also the teacher, may we both be protected. From what? From voices, from thinking that can kind of send you off into a trip. May we be protected from those things that don't serve us, that don't help us. May we both be nourished. Nourished by what? May we both be nourished by this knowledge. May this knowledge permeate, penetrate our minds deeply. May this knowledge penetrate our being so deeply that we start to genuinely express ourselves, genuinely see others, and conduct ourselves differently. And notice the word both, because if just the student listens and the teacher does all of the talking, then you may feel like the teacher has it all kind of planned there. But what the teacher, at least what I expect, what I enjoy, not expect, but what I enjoy is participation. So I need to sometimes remember to bring you into, by asking a question, because it's so easy just to speak and speak and speak. So I will attempt to bring you into the picture and ask you some engagements. So may we both be protected. May we both deeply be nourished by this knowledge. Nourished means may this knowledge, like food, when you're hungry and you eat and you feel a difference. So may this knowledge nourish your being. What do I mean by this? May this knowledge make a real difference, not just sort of intellectual discussions. Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahe. In other words, may this knowledge be something that in the light of this knowledge, may we make an effort. In other words, may this knowledge be there, as it will, but who still needs to make an effort for this knowledge to penetrate deeply into your being? You see, it's not a passive experience. It never was a passive experience. It is hard work. How many of us here spend at least 1 hour per week in learning this knowledge, on inquiring into reality, into your behavior, into your responses about the world, into how you've responded and how you can do something different next time? How many of us spend at least 1 hour per week? Okay, so this is lovely to hear. So this means this 1 hour is a good start. So the question is then, what makes a person go through a very long time of this process? And, they've been kind of inquiring for 1 hour for 20 years. But then if I ask you, why 1 hour only per week? Why 1 hour? There has to be, a little bit more time. So this means that if someone is a little bit dissatisfied about what is, happening and the progress is not happening fast enough, then let's just ask you, how much time are you investing in yourself? There was someone who said a very interesting statement. If business owners spend as much time, because when you build a business, you spend basically most of your time building it, marketing and seeing what competitors are doing, seeing how you can improve your product, knowing where to advertise and when not to advertise, testing what is losing you money, what is making you money, right? So it's a constant involvement. It's your baby. So you want to know every aspect of your business because it is something that you're passionate about, you're bringing value to the customers. So you're totally involved in the entire experience from beginning to end. And someone said that if you spend that much time as you build a business into understanding who you are, most will be liberated by now. Most will be liberated. So it's not like liberation is some big thing, right? That's impossible. That's not the truth at all. The truth is that 1 hour, that is the issue. So this 1 hour has to become longer. But not just because Andre says or some teacher says. You need to understand why that is the case, because it is for your own benefit. It is always in it for you. It is not what the teacher says. So like this, whatever statements I make, I'm not telling you what to do because you already are competent. You have a life. You have your own skill sets. You already have your own bearings. You know what you need to do. This is all very relatively clear. But then Vedanta shows you different realities, and these realities are true. But to be totally firm about what is, this 1 hour needs to become longer. So this is all that is being brought forward for a discerning, committed, dedicated student who really wants to understand and solve what we call the beginningless era. The beginningless era of looking at myself as one individual who has to go into the world and make myself happy. The truth is you're already complete right now. And this has to be discovered. Therefore, the program is about discovering. Tejasvina vadhitamastu. Therefore, may this teaching be looked at from different angles. Because just one angle is fine. But if you look at it from different angles, and that 1 hour is what gives you that space to look, then you come to see more teachings. Just like an elephant. You know, elephant story where 6 blind men were walking up to the elephant and they were told, hey, so what is it that you feel? Like they were all touching the different parts of the elephant, and someone was touching the tail, someone was touching the stomach, someone was touching the trunk, someone was touching the ears, and they were all blind. And then the fella said to them, okay, so what is it that you're touching? And the fella who was touching the stomach said, I am touching a wall. And he's totally certain about it, without a shadow of a doubt. It's a wall. The fella who was touching the tail says, I'm touching a snake. And he was totally certain about it. And so on. All of them who were touching individual parts were convinced. Why? Because they lacked the knowledge about the whole. So in that similar way, as long as my focus is on one particular set, one particular reality, and I'm convinced, and I close myself up thinking that I've been in spirituality for 50 plus years and therefore it's all fine, as long as I convince myself, I don't see what's around there. So Vedanta is not about stating how you got it. The truth is you're always getting it. You're always getting it. So this is one thing to bring forward. It's very easy to say, I understood. Very tempting, I understood. You're in the process of understanding. Even if you truly know who you are, what you are, you're in the process of understand, ing. Those three characters make a huge difference. Because the mind loves comfort zone. Comfort zone is the most comfortable thing, and we all love the path of least resistance. This means do as few things as possible and just go into a pattern of mechanical repetition. Do what's been done before and bring it over into the present, because it's easy. Where the real change happens is knowing that I have to do something new. I have to do something different in the light of the knowledge. Therefore, we are in the process of understanding. And when does this process end? Last breath. Not never, last breath, okay? Even if, see, in Vedanta, we don't say who's liberated or not. This is useless knowledge. Nobody wants to know this. Humility means I am an individual who has so much more to discover about what is. This is humility. Whether a teacher or a student, humility is knowing that there is so much more. Every person is a teacher. Everyone has something to teach me. Everyone has something to show me. And I have no right to discard you or you to discard another on the basis of, quote, they don't know what they're talking about. Because the truth is, every person who speaks is conditioned by 4 parts. So everyone you speak in this course will be conditioned by 4 parts. The first is what we call in Sanskrit samskara. Samskara means everyone comes with impressions. Impressions make you the person that you are right now. So you can have 2 twins grow up in the same family, and both of them will go their separate ways. They will be attracted to different things. They will have different ways of communicating. One may have a way of being highly analytical. Another may be very artistic. So now, why is one mechanical, one artistic? This is because of everyone gets born with what we call samskaras, impressions, carryovers. The second influencing factor is limited knowledge. Anyone who you speak to doesn't have access to all knowledge. Nobody. You don't have access to all knowledge. I don't have access to all knowledge. Because we don't have access to the background of what took place, of the person, of even yourself, we come to assume. An assumption produces miscommunication. There was a joke on YouTube, a prank, I watch this sometimes for entertainment, where a fella, he came up to gangsters in USA, New York, and he just goes up to them and he goes, "You looking for a smash, my boy? You looking for a smash, my boy? You know this? You looking for a smash?" I'm thinking, what are you talking about? You want to smash me? Now, right before they lose it, he pulls out an energy drink. You don't want to smash? So I thought this is very interesting because while he's saying, do you want to smash my boy? Huh? You look like you want to smash. And they're thinking, this guy wants to fight. So they don't have the knowledge. They don't have what this man is really talking about. The moment you pull out the energy drink, immediately you gain more knowledge and your entire response changes. So like this, anyone that you talk to doesn't have the facts, and thereby the chance of misinterpreting or understanding something cannot be 100% accurate. And this will never be the case. So it's a constant effort to, when we fall, we need to come back. We fall, we need to come back. There will never be a time when you will be perfect, word for word. Never make a mistake. And just, in fact, suppose you have two speakers, and one of them says everything word for word perfect. And the other makes some mistakes, some falls, kind of shows their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses. Who would you relate to more? The perfect fella or the one that's just sort of more human? You see? So in this way, we need to understand that everyone has limited information. Okay? The two other ones I will tell you further in the course. You need to pay very close attention. Okay. So I'm going to give us cards, and I want us to be comfortable with each other. So this is just my goofy little idea of handing out cards, and they're called relationship cards. They got various questions. So I think the idea is to hand this out, and maybe we will make a goal of meeting 5 people and say hello, how are you, and so on. And then you can ask a question. If you don't like the question, just change the card and ask something else. So this is comfort building. Okay, maybe hand this out. In Indian philosophy, we call it Shat Darshana. We have 6 schools which all talk about the reality. So in other words, through hundreds of years, rishis came together and they analyzed the nature of reality. And they came to certain conclusions. And those conclusions were different. So now, if you have different conclusions, then how do you know which is the final conclusion, which is talking about the truth? Before we answer that, what are these 6 schools of philosophy? And then I'll show you. The first is what we call, for example, Purva Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa says that, by Mandana Mishra, he read the Vedas, so the Vedanta is from the Vedas, and he says the purpose of the Vedas, the scriptures from which the Upanishads come, which is where this course is coming from, the purpose of the Vedas is to align yourself to what's called dharma, to the right conduct, to the right ways of living. And by doing so, at the end of your life, what you will do is go to heaven. So we've got dharma, and then by doing dharma, by living a righteous life, an ethical life, by refining your responses, by learning to accommodate differences, by learning to listen, by learning to look at where could have I made some improvements about the way that I approach someone, or was I being unfair with you, and to what extent could we improve our communication. So dharma is a lot about what we call self-reflection on your relative person, about the individual that you think you are. And what's going to happen is you're going to go to heaven. So Purva Mimamsa is not that different from many things or many religions that you may or may not be aware of. But then somebody else comes with, and we call it Nyaya. Nyaya. Nyaya is logic. Logic plus inference. In other words, they specialize in learning to use your buddhi, your intellect, how to ascertain certain realities which you can't contradict using logic. And they too, what they say is the ultimate purpose of life, if the Purva Mimamsa is to go to heaven, what does Nyaya say? They say that you, the person called Jiva, Jiva in Sanskrit just means sentient being, a sentient being. Jiva is eternal. Jiva equals eternal. So in other words, you as a person, you eternally exist and you go through different cycles of birth and death. And you say, okay, so what else do other schools say? Well, we have things like Vaisheshika. Vaisheshika. Vaisheshika says that atoms of the world are indestructible and they have always existed. So atoms. So whatever atoms that science looks at, particles and quarks and electron, all of these things, they have always existed and they are real. And Vaisheshika says that the world you live in is absolutely real. That this is the only world there is, and there's nothing more than this world. And whatever atoms are out there in the moon, it's all real. It's all absolutely real. So now, if you start to take this perspective, then you kind of start to wonder about where other planets are. Could there be other planets because they're all real? So your whole life changes by following Vaisheshika because the world is real. And when the world is real, what is it that you want to do in this world? If the world is absolutely real and all things are here in this world, what would you naturally feel compelled to do while living?
Maybe experience everything.
Yeah?
Maybe
experience everything. In other words, every experience becomes something to cherish, something to pursue, something to honor. Now we have yoga. Or before I say yoga, I'll say Sankhya. Now Sankhya is very close to Advaita Vedanta. And a lot of teachers who are not careful will actually throw Sankhya and teach Sankhya rather than Vedanta. And this can happen a lot in pseudo-spirituality. So what Sankhya says is there are two eternal realities. And they are Purusha, and Prakriti. So there are two eternal realities. Purusha is basically consciousness, and Prakriti is matter. And what they say is that your nature right now is, you think you're Prakriti, you think you're this physical body. So what you have to do is you have to shift that identity into Purusha, which is consciousness. But now you say, isn't this similar to Advaita Vedanta? That's exactly what Advaita Vedanta says. You think you're this body, mind, this flesh, these thoughts, and you need to, through a certain inquiry, understand that you are much more than this body, mind, and therefore understand your nature as consciousness. Well, there's a slight difference. In Sankhya, everyone is a separate Purusha. So you have your pocket of consciousness, my pocket of consciousness. So we are all different pockets of consciousness. So there's many consciousnesses. So this means you still remain as one individual because you're still different from everything else. And then we have yoga. Yoga basically comes from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which is mainly Ashtanga Yoga, 8 steps. And you say, what's the purpose of yoga? Well, it is twofold. The first is it's a practical system for Sankhya. So if Sankhya is knowledge, how to change your nature from Prakriti to Purusha, then yoga tells you how to go about that through meditation, for example. So yoga says exactly what Sankhya is, exactly what Sankhya says. So it's basically exactly the same as Sankhya. But yoga adds one more component, the how-to. Therefore, the 8 steps, Yama, niyama, asana, moving your body to act, to meditate, and then meditation, then samadhi. And then they have something called nirvikarana Nirvikalpa. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you heard that? So Nirvikalpa Samadhi is very useful. The reason is because the individual all their life was bound to thinking, I am my thoughts, I am my life, I am my concerns, I am all of my trials and tribulations. I'm all of that, all of my responses, and everything is mine. So in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what happens is, for one moment, however long it lasts, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you have no sense of this person. It's only I am. This person, who you think you are, for 10 minutes has completely resolved. Only one non-dual self remains. And what happens is, when the person comes out of this Nirvikalpa Samadhi, they have a profound revelation. They understand, wow. Because you're shocked. You're like, for the first time, you have come in touch with the nature of reality. You've come in touch with that which is all pervasive everywhere. And you're like, my God, I thought I was this, I was that. And now, having come out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I am just so touched to the core that my life from now on has changed forever. So it's not useless. It's very useful, because it lets you see that all of your worries and concerns had nothing to do with who you thought you were. You were something other than all of your concerns and the person. And this is very helpful. Therefore, Nirvikalpa Samadhi becomes about experience. And for this reason is why in much of spirituality, there's a lot of stress and emphasis on experience. It takes some understanding to come to see that experience has a place, but suppose you experience the final reality for 5 years. What is that in billions upon billions upon billions of years that this world has existed? What is that? Nothing. It's a little dot. So comes an individual for a few moments, a few years, and they get in touch with that reality. For how long? Well, maybe they're 30. And in 30 to how much? To 80 they die. So what is that? About 40 or whatever, 40 years plus minus. And now they say, I've touched the reality. And yet reality was here since beginningless time. So where's the question of getting in touch with the reality? The only thing you got in touch with was an experience that lasted 40 years. Reality is not bound to 40 years. Reality is eternal. Therefore, when it comes to Vedanta, so what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Vedanta, for us, it is not one of the schools of philosophy. It is the school of philosophy. Why? Because Vedanta shows you logical fallacies about the prior 5. It shows you that there are certain logical flaws, if you understand them and analyze them, that they don't quite make sense. So Vedanta shows you that through logic. And what specifically does Vedanta show you? This will come in the next session. Okay. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.